In the Gospel of Matthew, in chapter 7, we read, Jesus said, "Therefore everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash." Imagine your life is like a house. You already live in it since God has loved you into this world. And at the same time, you're still building it. Every day a little bit, your house of life. It's a temporary home. You know that well, or at least you suspect that. And at the same time, it should be a home for a while, for your life, your place in the world. And so you build. You think about how it should look so that it's uniquely yours. You think about how you would like to live and what makes you happy and which memory photos you would like to see on the wall and what you want the kitchen to smell like today. Sometimes you might also think, if you're honest, what you want it to look like from the outside, what others may think when they walk by it, and that maybe you should wash the windows again. Somehow I think we all do it that way with our house of life. We think about it, we make it beautiful, we build brick by brick, day by day, and then we live there, always a bit on the building side and in transition. And hopefully we feel at home in our life house. How solid is your house of life? Stone by stone you build it, and year by year you've got used to it and settled in, and it's good that way. But then comes a rainstorm, a cloudburst. We've experienced that in Germany during the last weeks. And also people in South Africa know about how it is when life gets trampled and they lose the security of life. One day everything suddenly turns black and it gets stormy and the sky opens its floodgates. A cloudburst always comes at some point, no matter where you live and how you live. That's when life turns black and the sky opens its floodgates and you can't even hear or see. There's no such thing as a safe life. Sometimes it gets shaken up, life and yourself and your house, and only then you will see if it holds. Before that, you can calculate as much as you want. The final test is the storm. The final test is life. Life doesn't know a test run. So how solid is your house of life? Whoever hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who builds his house on the rock, says Jesus. He says that at the end of the Sermon on the Mount. 3 intense, dense chapters that begin with phrases like, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." And then after that we are told what it means for the evangelist Matthew to live with Jesus, namely to do what is just, what is good, obeying the commandments and taking responsibility for yourself and for your neighbor. Jesus says, if you do this, your house will stand on solid ground. Then your life will not fall apart when it storms. Whoever hears these words of mine and puts them into practice, hearing and doing, both are important, says Jesus. Someone who does not hear knows nothing, and someone who does not act on it, his knowledge is useless. Then the house collapses. The beautiful self-image flows away through the fingers like sand, because everything is crooked and wobbly when hearing and doing don't match. And suddenly the insight hits me, it's probably not a matter of hearing. We know quite well what would be right, we have listened pretty well, but that is only the first step. The doing, the compliance that has to follow, should. But I suspect that won't work. Not for me, certainly. I'm not what I would like to be. And even more, the more I try to build my house of life nice and solid, the more I realize that I'm actually standing on pretty shaky ground. The final test is life, and there I sometimes look pretty old. Who will help me when the storm comes? Whoever hears these words from me and obeys them is like a wise man who builds his house on the rock. And suddenly it becomes clear to me, you are not building this house of which Jesus speaks on stability, but on impositions. Impositions like, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. This is not the promise of a trouble-free life, nor does it promise easiness. Indeed, it does not even promise peace. What Jesus says demands something of us, namely, that this house of which he speaks breathes something of the homelessness of the traveling preacher, and that the solid ground is not to make ourselves safe and comfortable, but to follow him. This house of which Jesus speaks is not built on stability, but on impositions. But how else should we experience the depth of life? Imagine that your life is a house. You already live in it since God loved you into this world, and at the same time you're still building it. But you're not building on yourself. You build on the impositions of the crucified and risen one. You cannot hold on to anything in life, but you can gain everything about life. Nothing belongs to you, nothing at all, but life is granted you for free. That is the imposition on which we build. This is the rock on which we stand. Amen.